This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your hosts, Radio Joe Hughes and the Z-Man, CliffZlotnik. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Good day. Welcome to IAQ Radio Plus, episode 688. And this week we welcome Pete Consigli, CliffZlotnik, and Jon Isaacson, plus a bunch of FOPs, Friends of Pete's, from Naples, Florida, following the AABSS Building Science Symposium and the Hurricane Response Workshop. We're going to get some key points from those two events and looking forward to a great show. Before we get started, let's thank our sponsors. They're the reason we can continue doing the show. And don't forget to check out afterthoughts.iaqradio.com after the show is sponsored by First On Site. Our marquee sponsor is First On Site at firstonsite.com. Our association sponsors are the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists, ACGIH.org, the American Industrial Hygiene Association, AIHA.org, the Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, IICRC.org. Industry sponsors are AEML Laboratories, AEMLINC.com, Particles Plus, ParticlesPlus.com, TSI Inc., TSI.com, Sunbelt Rentals, SunbeltRentals.com, Healthy Indoors Magazine, HealthyIndoors.com.
And now you can win a cool prize. It's time for the IAQ Radio Trivia question. Be the first to correctly answer. Simply email your answer to czlotnik at cs.com. Or if listening live, just text your answer from your computer. And now, here's the Z-Man.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations go out to John Spielfogel from Brooklyn, Massachusetts, who was first to identify Occam's razor as the problem-solving principle that states when you're presented with multiple competing hypotheses for a phenomenon or explanation for an event, you should start by selecting the simplest and most likely one, the one that makes the fewest assumptions. The IAQ Radio Trivia question for today, January 27, 2023, has been sponsored by TSI Inc., an industry leader in precision instrumentation for monitoring of indoor air. Learn how to expand your IAQ investigations at TSI.com. Here's today's IAQ Radio Trivia question. Which law of thermodynamics states that if two systems are in thermal equilibrium with a third system, then they are in thermal equilibrium with each other? Back to you, Joe.
Interesting, Cliff. Very good. All right, so I'm actually going to turn it right back to you guys because Pete's put together a great group of people to give us some of the highlights. I see Andy Oscar's there, ready to go. So, Cliff, let me turn it right back to you.
Okay, thanks. Well, it was I was really looking forward to coming because you and I first met, I think, at the first summer camp. And you may not remember, but you had a car and you were very kind because you slept me back and forth from the hotel to Joe's. And it was nice to have met you and spent time with you there, and a couple times since then, and especially here. So I was excited to be here. It was a great event, 2 days, saw a lot of very familiar faces that, I'd met at summer camp, met at different events, IAQA, and so on and so forth. So let's go back to the very beginning. What was your motivation for doing this? I mean, where did you get?
Well, we have a need here locally to spread the word on building science. Right. In other words, we had a lot of problems with our houses, particularly around the turn of the century. Houses built from 95 to 05 were adding insulation, getting tighter, but we didn't know how to do it. Normally, we went at it, and then a lot of stuff didn't work. So the motivation was to educate our local building and HVAC trades on building science, and of course how to deal with the humidity mechanically once it's in the building. And we've been continuing that. We've had these sessions on and off now. It's been 25 years since the first one. We've been going now for about 3 years since COVID. Right. And now we're back. So that was the motivation. It spread the word in building science locally.
Gotcha. And how did this event compare to prior events? Did you have more people here, less people, more speakers, less speakers? You know, what was different?
Yeah, pretty much everything was, I suppose, twice as big as it's been before. It was the brainchild of Rick and Ricky Sims to expand it. And so this is the first time we had a 2-day event. This is intended to, and it's turned out to be a regional event.
Okay.
So, yeah, and we had more speakers.
Understood.
After we brought in Dr. Joe Steebrook, everybody knows Dr. Joe.
Right.
That's probably what the building science guys paid to come to hear Joe.
Right.
1 or 2 people asked for their money back because in his old age, Joe no longer drops the F-bomb frequently. So a lot of disappointment there. But we, in terms of addressing a market, there's a certain number of people who want to hear Dr. Joe.
Right.
At summer camp, he's the host and brings in a variety of speakers. He gives about 1 session. At this session, you hear Dr. Joe.
Right.
It turns out it's warmer in Naples in the winter.
Really?
Than it is in Boston. So,
yeah, that's surprising, isn't it?
So it turns out a certain number of people will rather pay money to come to Naples in January than to go to Boston in August. The weather in Boston is about the same as it is here.
Understood.
And then, so that kind of, they say, 2-day regional building science conference. And of course, we're dovetailing with Pete. Pete's been our biggest supporter. Or we couldn't do this if Pete weren't helping us.
Well, I guess the question is, you know, we've been fortunate. We've had Joe Steebrook on our show previously. But how did you get all those people not only to agree, to attend at your event at the same time, the pioneers? How did you manage?
Well,
that?
first of all, again, that was all Rick Sims was the driving force behind that. In order, it wasn't hard to get Joe down here.
Right.
We paid him.
Understood.
That seemed to work.
Okay.
We'd all lost. A lot of people had lost contact with John Tooley.
Right.
So we just really had to call some people just to get his email or phone number.
Understood.
And then it was easy to convince him to come because he has a brand new presentation which he gave, Mad Air 2023. The hardest one to find was Neil Moyer. He's pretty much hiding.
Right.
So it turns out I know his daughter.
Okay.
I should plug there. Heather just finished law school. Isn't that amazing? He was teaching her to be a tech. She's in her mid-40s and got herself through law school. So I've been in contact with her. So anyway, I got her to get Dad. Neil would not come to appear.
Understood.
We lied to him. We promised him he would have root canal surgery if he came over to Naples.
Okay.
And then he found out he was at a conference.
Okay.
And we had Gary Nelson. Now, are people here familiar with Gary Nelson and Energy Conservatory? I think he's less known amongst his group.
I would think less known. Yeah.
Well, okay, so Gary Nelson invented the blower door and manufactures it, along with some other neat things like the True Flow grid and, of course, the manometer. He's theoretically retired. He sold the company to Steve Rogers.
Right.
But he just likes to come to the stuff, and he just makes a big contribution. And he was there at the beginning. So now I've mentioned the 4 legends: John Tooley, Neil Moyer, Gary Nelson, and Joe Steebrook.
Right. Yeah, I think his presentation, in terms of blower doors was very, very interesting because we now see, what they look like now. And I think most people in our industry be familiar having seen one or a picture of one or kind of know what they do. But to go back and look at the historical, blower doors on the back of trucks and, huge pieces of equipment and the design and, the involvement of universities and so on and so forth was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and you remember, and Gary just doesn't plug his product. If you see a university that's had a blower door, that means they had to reconfigure the building HVAC. It might have been a fan as big as this room.
Right.
To take the building down to minus 50.
Understood.
Yeah, he's been active in that. So the plug I put in for the blower door. Of course, we got competitors now. It isn't just exclusive with Energy Conservatory.
Right.
Is that you should be using it as a tool. It should be, I think, of like a level. Like we always have a level in the toolbox.
Right.
If we need a level, we pull the level out and use it. A blower door isn't something you just do once, like for 5 minutes, to take the vacuum on measure the tightness of a house. It should be out there in every project. If you're doing weatherization, you keep that blower door running all the time, and that's where you find your leaks.
I think you and Pete had an experience here of not only hosting this event, but also interacting with the crowd on an individual basis, on a public basis, and so on. So what's some of the feedback that you got back from people that attended?
The feedback was good. I mean, generally speaking, it was positive. Naturally, we got some, let's say, not criticism. Let's call it suggestions for improvement.
Yeah, understood.
But everybody was really, they were focused on the legends. That's what made this event different.
Yeah.
There was a great presentation by Kimberly Llewellyn from Mitsubishi, and Brian Orr. Probably most everybody here probably knows Brian Orr.
All of them, sure.
Completely different presentation.
Right.
You can hear some things you wouldn't hear at just any seminar.
Right.
So, everybody was pleased, I think.
Going back to the panel, I think that was, before I came, that was the thing that I was most looking forward to here. Let's talk about that. And, I thought that it was kind of unique. Where did you come up with the idea of making it like, Phil Donahue interview with, people on the couch and so on and so forth?
That might have been Pete. He might have kind of
Okay.
I think, yeah. You ever got to remember, I'm a back of the house engineer.
Okay.
I had a selling job when I first got out of college.
Understood.
And I think the expression was slightly politically incorrect. The comment was, I couldn't sell girls on first So the presentation was all Rick and Pete.
Okay. Actually, John, anything you'd like to get a word in on?
I thought the presentation, I hadn't heard of Brian Orr, and apparently I'm like you, I was living under a rock.
Right.
So I thought their presentation is really well put as far as like blending, what did she say, theory with experience, and then, which I think is attributed to what Joe presented. Brian mentioned, when we get lost in the complex, we fail to be masters of the obvious. And so it was really refreshing to hear Joe encourage people to reach out and, bring the younger generation in, but also his ability to distill high-level information, to real usable, for the everyday practitioner. So.
One thing that was slightly different about this conference is most conferences in my world are nerds, geeks, whatever you want to call it, like at summer camp. It's absolutely an ASHRAE. I'm a big ASHRAE person. I've been an ASHRAE. I got a pin or thing that says I'm a life member of ASHRAE. Okay, that means I've belonged more than 50 years and I have a pulse.
Okay.
So it's absolutely verboten to say anything commercial to advance your product.
Understood.
If any of you appear at an ASHRAE meeting or at summer camp, you've got to talk about the science, and you kind of got to talk equally about what the products do.
Right.
And that's fine. That's what we do. I mean, and you get your finger slapped if you commercialize during one of these presentations.
Sure.
Okay, this event was different. This was supported by vendors, by people who have products and services to sell.
Understood.
So we relaxed the rules. I guess I did that. Said, look, it's about science. It's about the truth when you're up there. But if it's the truth is what your product does, or the science of what your product is, then you got to tell us. I mean, you might have a process or a product that's proprietary.
Right.
Well, tell us about it. Right. So people were able to get directly to what they do.
One of the things that I've learned over the years is that people want to know, like yourself, people want to know which HVAC manufacturer's product do you use? Do you trust? Do you recommend? Do you have experience? I mean, you're notable in the field, and people that come and they hear you, they want to know what you do. do it. They want to hear that stuff. Yeah. And I think a lot of times there's a fence or a wall or a corral around it. Yeah. And I think sometimes people get disappointed and frustrated by it. I mean, in the audience, I mean, that definitely happens.
I think that myself. My first experience was I came back to my hometown, and I had to find a lawyer, you know, to handle my parents' eventually their estate, to manage their affairs. Understood. And I was talking to our banker, and I said, well, how do I choose a lawyer? You know, or I don't get it right. I said, how to find a lawyer? Well, when somebody recommends somebody, they tell you, you know, go to this person, and that's what, then ask them who they use. Right, absolutely. So before you ask me, I've been almost a missionary for water source heat pumps. Okay. I mean, all day, every day, water source heat pumps. That's in our condominiums, high rises, they almost all have water source heat pumps. Some of the big McMansions in Naples, water source heat pumps. We have some audience here, I'm sure, that's from the middle Atlantic states. That's your geothermal. Right. We just don't put them to the ground here. We put a cooling tower on the roof. All right. Water source heat pump has had its day. I put brand new water source heat pumps in my house about 4 years ago. I bought a house, remodeled it, just ripped them out and replaced them with Mitsubishi VRF. Okay. So before you ask the question, so somebody would probably want to know that, right? Right. No, absolutely. If I'm telling everybody you got to use water source heat pumps, right? But gee, I ripped them out of my house and I put in Mitsubishi. Right. That's probably important information, huh? Yeah. Well, you know, better, superior technology, better energy. But with everybody, you want to know what they're doing. No, absolutely. No, particularly the successful people. Right. And you know, speaking of successful people, you know, I want to go back to the Pioneer panel, and you know, for me, I felt like I was in the FBI and it was a stakeout, and you know, you're in that van and you're monitoring what's going on inside the building, because I think the people that were on the stage I believe they were oblivious to everybody in the audience, and they were just interacting and engaging with each other. And you have four really successful guys that are really legends and pioneers in the industry, and you know, you have this commonality among them is they all had like major struggles, you know, financially and personally. And so, I mean, and it was, you know, it's honest. You know, you see this guy like Tony Robbins, or, you know, he's this professional, you know, I'm going to make you rich and famous and so on and so forth. And he's had all these struggles. So, you know, all these successful people have gone through a lot of personal things. And I think for the audience, I think that was very, very important. Yeah. And they had this other commonality, which they used the term, you know, bring somebody up about mentorship, that everyone that was there had someone who had mentored them and kind of helped them along the way and made a you know, tremendous difference. Yes. Yeah, in what they did. And I think the humble beginnings, we heard, those are honest stories. Oh, absolutely. These guys tell honest stories. You just tell them in a way that's entertaining. Right. Yeah. That's my stories. I tell my kids, you know, Grandpa, you tell stories, but somewhere in there's some facts. Right. All right. But I do know they love to tell stories about driving from Toronto to Atlanta and bald tires and $10 in their pocket. Right. Maybe stretched a little bit. Right. But I do know that when they started in Florida, it wasn't big hotels and banquet rooms and going out for big dinners afterwards. I think, in fact, I'm certain Joe Steebrook, you know, slept at Neil Moyer's house, you know, and his kids had to sleep on the couch. I mean, understood. I mean, that's where they started. Right. Understood. Yeah. And one thing they have in common with it, I guess I'm an ASHRAE guy, or you want to put a label on me, you know, as an HVAC engineer. That's okay. More, you know, then got into building science. You guys are all over something else before you got into what you do is, and yes, I lost my point. Go ahead, Cliff. I do that quite often.
What were your takeaways from that Pioneer panel, John?
I think, like you said, in a very good way, it was just four guys, talking about their experiences and exactly that, because what do a lot of successful, I'm an overnight success, 30 years in the making.
Yeah.
And so it was very fun to hear.
What we all have in common is that we're trying to find either fact or truth. They're kind of related,
Right.
and that works really well.
Right.
Like our slogan in ASHRAE, it's not really our slogan, it was of our founders, was proclaiming the truth. And I mentioned that on the podium, and that kind of relates back to what we're doing here. However, if you read a little further, all those proclaimers were people making and selling products.
Right.
But they're doing it based on fact.
Right.
A place where truth works real well for me is I do a certain amount of expert witness work.
Mm-hmm.
My colleagues won't do it. I don't know another engineer locally, so I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Well, that was my customer. I'm not going to criticize that guy. Well, no, that's not what it's about. You criticize the work, find the problem, identify the problem, tell people the problem is, what to do about it, and you leave it out. There was people there that had been on the opposite side that I testified against.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my sources of business is people, contractors who I've been the expert.
Oh, right.
Condemning their work.
Yeah.
When they have a problem, they come and seek me out.
Understood.
Because they know I'm just going to talk about the problem. I'm not going to criticize anybody.
Right.
And that's a little bit with, similar with the science. So let's just get to what the fact is.
Right.
What the truth is.
I just love those old pictures they had of working with each other on different projects and so on and so forth, and then
Different colored hair or more of it.
yeah.
Well, what I like to bust Joe about is, there's a great picture. You've all seen it. He's been putting it up for about almost 30 years about the Library of Congress.
Right.
He had a picture of it there at the event. As I say, back when I was a kid, I think it was about 1954, Sir Edmund Hillary, he wasn't Sir Edmund Hillary.
Right.
He climbed Mount Everest.
Understood. Yeah.
So there's a photo of Sir Edmund Hillary on the summit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to prove he was there. Who was holding the camera? And I think that trip eventually did get credit, I believe.
Okay.
Well, anyway, if you look at this picture of Joe, and he's holding court in the Library of Congress, proving that Congress sucks. You've all heard the story over and over. Right. But if you look real hard, there's some poor soul lugging all his equipment, a blower door and instruments and hoses. You know who that is in that picture? Do you guys know? That's Neil Moyer.
Okay. Well, there was something. What did he say? One of the zingers, like the one that he said that I liked the best, at this one that I hadn't heard him say before, is there's no dough without a show. Okay. Yeah. And that's really, it was pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's true. Yeah.
Presentation.
Right. And those are pretty good. The rain,
falls.
The rain flows mainly on the plane.
On the plane, yeah. And then how he came up with it at the
Drain the rain from the plane. Drain the rain. Hey, Cliff, can I get a question in for Andy?
Absolutely. Sure.
No.
Hey, another presentation by Jon Tooley was about mad air, Andy. I wonder if you could tell people the importance of the work early on that John did, and they call it mad air, and why.
Yeah, and somebody else please tell me what the letters stand for. I don't remember exactly. It had to do with the relationship between the structure and mechanical equipment, but what wasn't understood until these guys attacked it was we didn't understand that ducts leak air and that houses leak air, and air leaks everywhere. Mainly where any place with a joint or a change in direction. You think about that. That's true about everything in life. If you're laying block, it's easy to lay cement block in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got to make the corner. It's easy to make a straight board. But let's try to fit two pieces of board together. That's hard. Well, it's hard to fit things together at joints and changes of direction. So that's where leaks are. But nobody had thought of the building as an enclosure. Right. So they're the guys that kind of got their arms around that. Now they're the ones that realize that ducts leak. I don't know if anybody here with sheet metal experience. I was probably working in an industry where we use sheet metal ducts. And I was doing that, well, not so much here, but certainly for 30 years. And we were really good at it. I mean, if you do it by the book. I think the trade originated in Pittsburgh. Anybody or from around Pennsylvania that's worked, they know what slips, drives, brakes.
Oh yeah, no.
All that. Okay, well, that was really good stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, what we didn't know was it was a really, really good duct, but it leaked like a sieve.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So they had to figure that out, and they had to figure out why that was important, because in our climate, all the air that leaks out has got to come from where? Outside. It's got to comes in, and that brings in heat and moisture. So to answer your question, that's why the work was so important. Nobody even understood how to go at that, Joe.
And he did that, and he also did a lot of research on it and where the air goes and how it goes, and then put together these beautiful papers that I know he talked about.
Yeah, and
well, speaking about Pittsburgh, a lot of houses with pan ductwork where they use the floor joist and they just put metal on it. And then, hey Joe, tell the audience what a Pittsburgh toilet is.
Well, we all had one in the basement. It was just a toilet in the basement. It didn't necessarily have to have walls around it. It was just a toilet. And when you came home from the mill, you went into the basement, or the farm. You went into the basement, you dropped your clothes there, and you did your business. And if you were lucky, you also had a Pittsburgh shower, which was next to the Pittsburgh toilet.
It's amazing. It's like any house built in the 30s. I mean, they have one in every single one of them. But yeah, it's one of the common things that kind of goes along with the ductwork. Yeah. Pete, would you like to make any comments on?
Well, on the Pittsburgh toilet, I had a different take in that. Apparently, that was the 5-gallon pail in the basement if they didn't have plumbing.
Well,
and I've been to one of those houses, actually, so I'm telling that from firsthand experience. Thanks for the setup, Cliff. You didn't know I was going to say that. No. Hey, Joe, I'm the new Omaha kid. He never knows what's going to come out of my mouth.
Omaha.
Can you tell he can speak up so I can hear the
No, that's what I was going to say.
Well, I didn't want to have to walk up to the table for the phone, so I figured I don't need no stinking microphone if you can hear me. Okay, Cliff, seriously, what was the question?
No. The question was your comments on his event.
Oh, on Andy? Well, I just wanted to say, anytime I'm involved with anything, we're going to have fun. It's a core value in a good way. Most of you guys on the podcast know that because over half of you know me. Anyway, Andy, the event was fabulous.
Thank you.
And working together with Rick and Ricky behind the scenes to do all that stuff was one of the highlights of me.
Yeah.
To get those pioneers, as long as we tried. People don't know the history, Joe, of this event was supposed to be launched in 2020. And we had so much work and time that we put into it. And 2 weeks before the event, the world closed down. We tried to see if we could run it in 2021, but it was too complicated. One of the things that we were going to do was, in the 2020 model, when it was called spring training, Joe had said that they had kind of launched the spring training while we were doing a winter break, and like we knew each other, we didn't know. So Joe said, hey, you guys ought to call Andy and consolidate. Well, we coordinated that first year, and the winter break went off. It was right after the IAQA when it was in West Palm, and we were planning on moving to spring training, and then what happened. Now, we tried to bring it back earlier, but the problem was the event center where we initially had it closed down, never came back. And then this venue, we had this thing called the Hayes venue, and what we were going to do is going to be a slight model after summer camp. We were going to have the technical sessions, like a hotel, which was in this event center. And then this Hayes venue was a venue not far from there in Bonita Springs, where you rent this property for a week, and the guy who owned this, it wasn't a residential neighborhood, but you rented it to put weddings on, events like that. It had tiki bars, it had a big house with 4 bedrooms, all the speakers. We had 2 cottages. Andy was staying in one and Joe in another. We had to get a golf cart on there just to ride around in a venue with stuff, just to take the garbage to the dumpster. We had a guy who was similar to the Texans at summer camp with like that one of the nights was come in with the barbecue and deliver a whole Texas style barbecue. That was one night, right? Then we and some of the vendors were going to bring big equipment in there for demo. We're trying to figure out how to bring all it in. But then the highlight was going to be, I had the summer camp crew, Darren, Miguel, Springston, all these guys, a lot of them were all going to come. Hey, Jack, you're on there. How you doing, buddy? They were all going to come, and we were going to cook in the house, and we had all the stuff bought to put a little mini kind of deal on it. We're going to do the Sicilian night and a bunch of other stuff. And Joe, they were all going to stay over for some extra days. There's going to be about 50 people, small, for networking and just, to try to do that. And we were all excited about it. Well, what happened was when we tried to reschedule, the issues with at night, with the venue, it just didn't become practical. So what wound up turning out, the Hilton, Naples Hilton was the only venue that could accommodate us. And it's a great venue. They did a good job. Everything was terrific there. A little on the high side, but it is what it is. It's Naples. And so then in order to get the networking, we just followed through with the same model from the winter break, where we just put the parties on and, off venue, because I don't eat in a hotel every night. And those worked out really good. And we had started that the last couple of times. But the key thing is we had been inviting Andy and Rick and them to come to winter break for quite a few years. Mm-hmm. And there were some conflicts, but Rick always came.
Yep. And
then last year, Rick did a very technical presentation. And after that, there was a meeting with with Ron Mazur from AML, came over with Rick, and we decided to say, let's collaborate these 2 events and co-brand them. So we have the odd, even year with the different credits and try to blend the audiences. And as you can see, I've already started the marketing for AML Winter Break next year. The marketing starts as soon as one ends, the other one ends. And then next year, Rick and Andy and all the others, they'll bring the flyers for what they're going to do in 2025. And we're hoping to build this and to just bring these audiences together so we can blend remediators and assessors with builders, HVAC guys, architects, and engineers. And we're hoping that the last week of January or the first week of February, we want to stay away from ash rate surfaces, these other shows, that this is essentially where the world comes to learn about building science, which is a connector, and who the best of the best are in all these disciplines. That's my story, Radio Joe, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, Pete, thank you. Hey, John, let's go to halftime. Our marquee sponsor is First On Site, your trusted full-service disaster recovery and property restoration company at firstonsite.com. Association sponsors are ACGIH, Advancing Careers of Professionals in Environmental Health, Industrial Hygiene, and Safety, interested in defining their science. ACGIH.org. AIHA, Healthy Workplaces, A Healthier World. AIHA.org. The IICRC, a nonprofit standards development and certifying body for the cleaning and restoration industry. IICRC.org. Industry sponsors are AEML Laboratories, free shipping, great pricing, same-day results with no rush fee, AEMLINC.com. Particles Plus, feature-rich particle counters and air quality instrumentation. Count on us, particlesplus.com. TSI Inc., an industry leader in precision instrumentation for monitoring indoor air. Learn how to expand your IAQ investigations, TSI.com. Sunbelt Rentals, availability, reliability, and ease for all your IAQ and restoration needs at sunbeltrentals.com. And Healthy Indoors Magazine, a free online magazine for industry professionals and consumers, healthyindoors.com. I also want to mention quickly the Restoration Industry Association is going to be joining us again as a sponsor, so we look forward to having more to talk about with them and promoting their upcoming conference coming up. Where, Pete, do you know the dates on that?
What's that?
The RIA.
Restoration RIA conference.
It's April 23rd to the 26th. It's in Orlando at the Rosen Center, Shingle Creek.
Great. Thank you, Pete. Cliff, let me send it back to you.
Okay.
And John.
And what I was going to do is kind of turn it over to John and get his comments on just the beginning of the event.
Well, we kicked it off with a Pete Consigli kickoff for our agenda and all the hard work he did putting it all together and setting everybody straight with the what is it called, Pete? I'm drawing a blank.
The BMA?
No, I'm sorry, the antitrust.
The antitrust.
Any boundaries are there. So then David Popper and Justin Peterson called in from Zoom as the Legal Eagles and most familiar with all of the, shall we say, the unique aspects of working in Florida and some of the updates on that. So, and Popper introduced Peterson as one of the most brilliant minds he's worked with in relationship to trying to keep up on that. So anyone working in Florida or wanting to know how to best navigate that, they're definitely a great resource. And then following them was the remediation panel with some of the younger guys, Michael Samula on the assessment side and Josh Winton on the remediation side. And Michael shared about a really interesting product with some fruit in a very large warehouse that was affected by a hurricane. And something the audience will be very proud to hear the younger guys reporting is he placed a heavy emphasis on safety, for the management of the company and for technicians on site and working with the customer. And I think he talked about the working together, working with each other and not against each other for the IEP and the contractor, and also setting those clear and grounded expectations so that way we can come to a positive outcome. And then Josh Winton followed that up with talking about some of the parameters for pre and post evaluation and kind of give a breakdown of how he saw that being most effective. I think that gets you. Then we had a mid-morning break, and then that got to where you were able to put your keen eyes on everything. Yeah,
and then I think the first total presentation that I got to see was Bob Blockinger and
Bavarian Bob.
Yeah, Bavarian Bob, and it was kind of talking. What's the difference between a consultant and a subject matter expert?
Is Bob watching? What are you, stupid?
And it was pretty interesting, and he brought up that this the point of if you're a consultant, you're really considered a trusted advisor. And one of the interesting things is my biggest takeaway from what he said wasn't something that he said. My biggest takeaway from what he said was Ken Larson's comment on what he said after he said it, and I really thought it was a brilliant comment, and it was the fact that buildings, by surrounding themselves with their own experts, are in a much better, before a claim occurs, they're in a much better position once a claim occurs.
Yeah.
And so many times in these, they don't know what to do if they've established who they trust and who the experts are. Before they end up having the loss, it's a whole lot better. For them later, and they're really in a great position of leverage too. And
I think that prior accumulating your experts prior, which was Ken's encouragement, as
Right.
opposed to the working definition, I think Bob brought up of an expert is
That-
someone brought in at the
That
end.
was my definition.
Oh, that's what you brought it. Someone brought in at the end to share the blame.
That's right. The expert brought in at the last
Once it all
minute
goes to crap.
to share the blame,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
or share the liability. That was good. And then after Bob, we had Casey and Casey Clark,
Another young guy.
another young guy. And I was real impressed with Josh too. I mean, he did a really, really nice job. And I think one of the coolest things is it was like a nice room. I mean, it's like intimate and there's like it's not 100 people and
Yeah.
a very, very tight, nice intimate room. And, very, very good interaction, between the folks that were there and
Yeah.
just really good comments. Really, really strong program.
Well, it was a nice mix too of grounded guys that have been doing it a long time and know what they're talking about, and young guys trying to do it the right way.
And yeah, I think, with Casey, there's never a wrong time to ask for payment. And I think a lot of times, we have tendencies not to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, and then another thing is if they won't sign the work authorization at the beginning, they're not going to sign the check at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Amen to that.
there's some consistency there. And, if you want to do storm stuff, you got to buckle up. I think, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
And the other thing he said was that analogy of a duck. You're like all prim and proper, but you're floating on the surface, but you're kicking like hell underwater.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good one.
When we circle back around to his comments about, one of the most important things you can do, especially in storm work, but even day to day, is the clients that you choose to, align yourself with. 'Cause
Right.
a bad client isn't worth it.
And let's maybe move over to Jeremy. I thought that his, I'm probably not going in order, but I'm going in order of the pages you're on. So to me, that's more important than the order of the schedule. I thought that he.
Now you just pulled an Omaha clip.
No, it's a Pittsburgh, not an
All right, okay.
It's like for the Pittsburgh toilet.
Yeah, I got it. Pittsburgh protocol.
That's right.
I got it.
You got, yeah. So, but, he, I didn't realize that Jeremy and Ralph had kind of worked together and they
Yeah.
had kind of that mentorship relationship. I'd never met him before, but, he talked all about standards and, qualifications. And, I thought that was, I liked what he said and the importance of mentorship. He talked about certification and, the one comment that wasn't made by him, but there was a comment made, and it might have been Steve Reck that had made it at Andy's event. The fact that someone has credentials doesn't mean that they're competent. And, you can have all the credentials in the world, but if you don't have the experience, you don't have the common sense, you don't have the skill, having the badge doesn't mean that you're competent. And I thought that was important.
We were having a sidebar with Ken though, and I think it was brought up in the event that credentials though in court are often what the court's looking for.
Correct, yeah. Credentials oftentimes do give, the court gives them greater weight than they give,
Did we get that right, Ken?
experience.
Yeah.
Right. And
So it is important to do both,
And, I thought all the photos of the air sampling pumps on various jobs being on the floor. We really don't live on the floor of our house.
Yeah.
But that's where all these guys are taking the air samples, so.
Well, I think a lot of questions came out of that presentation, from Ralph and Jeremy, and that was, just ask yourself, why are you doing what you're doing? And is it actually measuring what you think it's measuring?
Well, actually, Ken's words were third-party experts surrounding the client. The client is less likely to get into a dispute. So
Yeah.
that's kind of, I liked what he said better than my paraphrase, but in any event.
I did too, but I wasn't going to say anything.
But you could have. We'll put it in the blog. What about Shane Bailey? I thought that he did an interesting, I think his whole business concept is really interesting, which is, you know, in our industry, a lot of times we'll do moisture mapping, you know, like after a water loss, you know, where's the moisture,
Yeah.
to kind of map it out. And he kind of maps out the whole building,
Yeah.
you know, the outside, the inside, before they go in. And I thought that that was really a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a couple steps, that would be the second power of what Ken said.
Yeah.
You know, having that appraisal of your building, having, you know, what the conditions were and the documentation
Yeah.
of your systems and what good condition they're in and so on and so forth before you get a loss.
Well, I think
It's important.
the proof's in the pudding, because two of the largest contractors in our industry, they have whole programs dedicated to that, especially on the commercial properties, and they've proven that they can kind of get ahead of everybody by doing so.
And speaking of pudding, that creme brulee at Shane's Brothers Restaurant was definitely on target there.
Yeah. Well, and then that ties into technology, right? Because Shane and Paul kind of back to back as far as, you know, using your tech up front, making those relationships so they know who to call, and then getting the right technology partner to assemble that information and present it properly.
And I like some of the ideas about getting in, you know, using LinkedIn to get, you know, introductions and, you know, find out who the treasurer is.
Yeah.
You know, of the company or whatever. I thought that, you know, looking at the corporate report, find out who the treasurer is, and, you know, if you're gonna give them more beans to count, you want to figure out who's counting the beans, I guess.
Are you saying, Cliff, that the proper use for Facebook and LinkedIn is not to advertise to other contractors that you're better than them at doing what they already do, but maybe for outreach and presenting your information to people that will actually use it?
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Wow, that's groundbreaking stuff.
It is.
Hey, Cliff.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All of the messages out there.
What were your thoughts on the encircle presentation, Paul Donald?
I was.
Yeah.
Pete. Here, John, what does it say? Does he always just jump in like he just can't help himself? Okay.
Hey, Cliff,
Pete, where, trivia question for you, where did Paul Donald work before he started in Circle?
No, yeah, he said it. He said it, and I can't remember.
Go ahead.
Blackberry.
Blackberry,
Right.
and then he was an electrician as well.
I knew the electrician part of it.
Right, so,
He shared quite an interesting story. Ashley and I had the privilege of sitting next to him last night at dinner, and he shared more about that story.
it was pretty good, but he has 30 years of software experience, and, you know, this Encircle is a documentation platform, and that today, I think success in our industry is really about people, process, and training. And before we get into his statistics and crunching and so on and so forth, I thought the importance of something that he said, I just never would have thought of it before, but he said a lot of the restoration companies that are very, very successful in doing cat work actually practice it. Yeah, but before the event. And if you think about it, I mean, I guess it's like football or any other sport. The more you practice it, the better, you know, the better you are.
Well, I think it juxtaposed against people who say, hey, we're kind of struggling on day claims, let's go chase a storm.
Right. No, but that's what happens with a lot of these guys.
We'll go make money.
They think that, you know, absolutely. But, you know, the fact that, of all the users, and I guess they have thousands of people that use that product, the 2%, that 33% of the people that did cat work met their financial expectations, while 67%
failed.
Of their customers did not.
Well, that's so key though. Like your revenues can grow, but if you don't have the proper systems, right? Like, sure, you maybe met or exceeded your revenue goals, but maybe you made crap on the money, right?
Speaking of revenues growing, the average customer there did 226%
higher
volume, which is important.
Hey, guys, I'm not sure if Paul said this, but something you just said, John. Who said, and it could have been one of the panel guys, who said, if you're going to respond to this cat, keep in mind, what about your regular customers? Because they don't want to hear that you have some emergency to take care of. Who said that? That was important. And we've been talking about that.
I think it's going to come up.
Was that Paul or someone else?
I think someone else, but I should
Oh,
have.
top 10, okay.
I'm going to have it on. No,
Top 10,
I'm going to have it on there. Yeah. So then let's talk about Ed now. So we had Ed.
Well,
Cross.
I
Go
think
ahead. Absolutely.
Paul said, overriding kind of that concept is understand emotionally, but act logically. And I don't remember if that was his quote or not.
Hey.
Can I ask you?
It's like I was my second to the last note, but like I'm trying to feed you, man.
Hey, Cliff, I want to ask a favor.
Go ahead.
For my brother Ed.
Go ahead.
Can we save him for last? Can you do Crosa?
Yeah, no, I can do.
Do Crosa. I want to add, Ed was.
No, I'm going to do Ralph first.
Oh, Ralph, I forgot about Ralph. Oh, yeah, Ralph, Crosa, and then let Ed be the.
Okay.
Because he's the advocate, he's a restoration lawyer, let him. He was great.
Okay. All right.
Well, something too in that line that Paul said that I think a lot more contractors should chew on is consider the reviewer, if your program work, or adjuster as your accountant.
You know, this guy was like sitting next to me, and every note that I wrote down, like he has the same note.
I took pictures.
It's like, it's scary. It's like, what's my last note? It's like, Ken, I'm telling you, it's like somebody trying to cheat on the WLI
Hey, Cliff,
exam.
remember this.
I think your
He
handwriting is
said
better.
you guys are the OGs. So if he's gonna cheat, at least cheat for the valedictorian.
No, I'm
I'm
not accusing him of cheating, but
No, I'm only kidding. That's
it's
cheating like in quotes.
no, but it's good to,
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
the same. It's
You're on the same surfboard.
Yeah, but you know the important things that we heard. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we got.
Charting the dang learning curve.
So we got Ralph. That's
So
right.
going to Ralph.
Yeah, so let's go into Ralph. So,
I mean, you already brought up Jeremy. Jeremy and Ralph were paired together. I got to sit with them. I think that's obviously, I think we're preaching to the choir, even to those listening in, but you know, a lot of what you learn at these kind of events is off the clock, but got to hear more about their story and Ralph practicing what he preached. And he said that from the stage. He's like, you know, Joe said it, Ralph said it, you know, if you're not grabbing somebody, but Ralph said, you're grabbing them to train them up, but to teach them to be independent and to kind of be a guideline, right? You know, and so there's nothing better than bringing somebody that's up and coming, you know, and it goes from them asking you questions incessantly about everything to, you know, maturing into, hey, I think this is the right thing to do. I just want to run it by you. And then those calls become less and less, and then they're flourishing. And I think that was one really cool dynamic between their presentations and their relationship was, you know, Jeremy Beagle's 100% his own person, but.
right. I think one of the things that Ralph said that I never really thought about, but it really makes absolute sense that, you know, I'm from Pittsburgh and we leave the fan on all the time. And
Because of the bathroom in the basement?
Well, actually, where I live now does not have a Pittsburgh toilet because it's a newer home. But all my previous homes before that did have them. But the fact that if you move, you know, from our climate, you know, northern climate, and you move down here, you're just used to keeping that fan on all year long. And what happens if you're down here and you kind of leave it on? It kind of creates some moisture. It changes, absolutely. So I thought that was interesting. I never thought about some of these things. I mean, you know, he's like, he looks at all this stuff forensically. He goes in and he's like a detective, and he kind of wants to know the why and the how and so on and so forth. And I never really think about things the way that he thinks about it, in a very, very meticulous way. Because, you know, normally, you know, we have a problem, somebody wants solved, we kind of go in, we solve the problem, and you know, his whole thought process.
Well, he said too, you know, he's like, when he's called as a witness, I'm not for the insurance or the contractor. Right. I think that's something that's important for contractors too, is we say all the time that we're advocates for the customer. And I think it was said in our room and at the event, we're advocates for the structure, right? So because what the customer wants, they can be just as bad as the insurance company sometimes in their expectations. And we get all riled up about defending something that has no data or no grounding in what the, because I think Ralph brought up some of those sometimes. Yeah, it was a long-term loss and this is excluded. You know?
Hey, John, Mickey Lee always said that. He always says, be the advocate for the project.
Yeah.
Period. If you do the right thing for the project, everything else falls in place.
Yeah.
It's the same point. Hey, so listen, guys, Joseph, we're gonna start the roundup at 1 o'clock. All right, we'll probably go to about 1:15. So move in, Ralph, do some key points in CROSA and then cross, and then we'll go into the roundup.
Okay. You got it, Cliff?
Yes, sir. Hey, I understand authority.
Joe's D&M at me. He's in charge.
No problem. Okay, CROSA. First of all, he had a really cute dog. But the funny thing is, he and I have cute dogs, and my dog kind of looked like his, and we don't have. But the difference is, my dog is a Havanese dog. That's the national dog of Cuba, and I figured that that's what he had.
He's Cuban.
I know.
Yeah, right.
I figured that he didn't. So, but in any event, I think with CROSA that he's attended insurance conferences. He's attended like the storm conference that was going on, I guess, at the same time as this
in Orlando,
which is a lot of public adjusters and vendors and so on and so forth. And that it's good to know that we think alike. Okay, we think about how we can beat the insurance company, and the insurance company kind of thinks about how they can beat the contractor and how they can beat the policyholder. So,
yeah.
And I think his idea of compromise is important. And but he just has that natural. I mean, when you just the mannerisms and he's soft spoken, and you can tell that he really means it. You know? I mean, that really comes over.
Well, his character is Widow Brown, but he also says don't allow Widow Brown to get you into a scenario that you shouldn't be in.
That's right. Yeah, don't feel too sorry for Widow Brown that you're gonna do
something
stuff
bad for your business. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But the funny thing is, I wanted to ask him a question, and I didn't get a chance to do it because he had told about the story where a good friend of his that worked for an insurance company, he had this big sewage claim, and the insurance company, I guess, told him it was covered, kind of led him on to believe that it was covered, and so on and so forth. And I guess at the end, they kind of reneged on the coverage. I forgot to ask him whether the insurance company was going to let him make up the loss on the next job. None of us have ever heard that.
And get it in writing. Get it in writing.
Let's see. He kind of told us that the insurance company, kind of whines a lot about not making money, but they're actually, I guess it's I think in the United States, property and casualty is a $1.6 trillion business. And, they've taken in trillions, but they're only paying out millions. So I think they're still doing okay. He talked about problems in Florida, with coverages and the new law. And, the new law here, I think hurts everybody. I think it hurts the policyholders and it hurts the contractors.
Well, he brought up too, and we'll get into Ed and even what Popper and Peterson were talking about, but it's amazing. One of the most amazing things to me about the shenanigans in Florida is under the guise of consumer protection, they can take away consumers' rights.
Right.
and they hand it away, and the politicians are in on it too, probably because they don't know any better. But people will say, yeah, we got rid of AOB. It's like, well, you got rid of your own rights.
Right.
All right. Any more on Peter CROSA's presentation?
It was a great presentation.
Yeah.
Let's go to the roundup, John.
And then he concluded.
He dropped the mic. All right. Shout out to our friends at Madison IAQ. Let's go back to the Z-Man and Jon Isaacson for their top 10 list. We got a top 10 list, actually.
We do. Although I think there's more, and Ed kind of screwed up his numbers, I think, a little bit. But
Well, you got interrupted. Shocker.
Yeah.
right. I wonder who would have interrupted.
Hey, Joe, I gotta have a new icon for the watchdog. It's gonna be this big, huge nutcracker, right? F-O-P nutcracker, like you crack the walnuts, you know, like that thing. That's what I'm gonna have.
I'll get you
got
one
you.
on the show.
All right.
All right, thank you.
So, yeah, he gave us his top 10 list, and his 10th, you know, kind of like, who does it on TV? Who's the guy that does it on
Letterman.
TV? Letterman, yeah. So,
Letterman.
number 10 was neglecting your bread and butter business and your core customers who rely upon you for being available. It's just not a good thing.
All right, we're going back with
nine.
9.
I didn't, differentiate between cat versus non-cat. I actually stopped writing them down.
Okay, all right. Number 9, failing to understand the difference between cat work and non-cat work. And number 8 was failing to properly plan to enter a minefield. And you need a proven mentor. You need to think about food, shelter, fuel, clothing, and have a local liaison if you're going to come in from out of town. Number 7 was beware of slimy chasing and being too aggressive. Number 6, assuming falsely that industry standards don't apply. And he talked about should and shall. And talked about, let's see. Let's go to number 5. Failing to use state valid contracts is a big issue. That different states have different requirements, and if you use if you use the wrong contract, they don't have to pay you for the job, and
Hosed,
and all sorts of other stuff like that. And then he talked about having the contract that was too tough, too, that was totally in your favor, that could be taken away in court as well. He came up with an idea that I came up with 40 years ago.
Plagiarism.
That's right.
You heard it here on IAQ Radio.
And what's amazing is somebody took away 15 years credit because he said 25 years and it was 40.
Yeah.
But, you know, in our business, we stopped using the term estimate many, many years ago. We just did not use it. You know, we would call it a damage appraisal or, and he suggests that we call it. He suggests that we call it bid, but you only gave me 25 years.
You know what? That 25 was we did the Willie started. I didn't go all the way back to Z-Man and the Unhouse. I was up to Willie. That was
okay.
I never would shortchange it.
Right. So Ed suggests that we call it a bid, not an estimate, and that once we have a contract, that becomes the scope of work.
Scope of record, yeah.
Right, and then that we should send invoices.
Mm-hmm.
So hold on to that. Joe, this is an important point. Ed said with that point, he is now officially making a statement to the industry, and he rolled it out at the workshop that he is going to advocate now that the entire industry does not use the word estimate at all anymore, period. And what they've done with Xactimate, they call it a report. And all this kind of stuff. We need to, with the AJ, I think what we need to do as advocates, we need to clarify the language of the industry and get everyone to use that to eliminate confusion so we don't get manipulated, either intentionally or by accident in an honest way that we kind of get put to us. All right? That was an important, very important. I imagine he's going to roll that out at the convention.
I'm not sure, but, you know, our reasoning is that 40 or 50 years ago, we used to advertise in the yellow pages, and everybody, regardless of what their service was, whether there's a glass replacement or flooring or roof, everyone gave free estimates. So it devalued what we did, you know, where you go in and you're doing a scope and putting a house back together after it's severely damaged.
Yeah.
And
well, we advertise that. We covered that on our podcast. You want a free estimate? Tell me a little bit about okay, it sounds like it's maybe $1,500. Would you like me to come out and do a bid? We charge for that.
That's a good thing. I think another good point that Ed made, don't charge the dry stuff you're going to remove. And that, make a choice, one or the other. Which line item do you want to get paid for, drying it or taking it out? But don't double dip. Let's see.
Customer needs skin in the game.
Yeah, customer needs skin in the game. Get a written commitment. He used lump sum, fixed price on, and he said at the beginning of the job, you should be able to give that customer a fixed price or a lump sum price on day one. I'm a big believer in that. They talked about, I think, the value of joining RIA because they've written position statements and white papers, and they're actually advocating this stuff at the at government level. Let's see, and then he said Xactimate is not up to the 10 Commandments. It's not the 10 Commandments. I thought that was pretty good.
We do a pretty good job of following those in America.
That's the 10 Commandments?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Let's see, failing to understand how flood insurance works. You have to, most people, may not know that they have to buy it. It's a separate type of policy.
Something very different.
Number 3 was failing to secure advance payment. If most cat work, regardless, you're not going to get paid on time. So it's really, really important to get that that advance payment.
When we had a comment, Lauren McIntyre brought that up. Kind of, he's working with the contractor, and 3 months later, they're sending them the documentation for him to write an estimate, and then they're, well, how come I'm not getting paid? Because, well, you waited 3 months to
and then it was
send your invoice in.
So actually, Casey Clark brought that up. He said, when it's done and it's ready, you got to send the work. You have to send it in. If you waited 2 or 3 weeks and then you're complaining I didn't get paid, well, you didn't you didn't send the bill in.
Well, especially on the larger stuff, though, sending weekly updates. Hey, this is where we're at. This is our ROM. This is our, making sure the adjuster and all the people that are in the chain of events are, there's ways to better secure their money. And contractors are notorious for blaming everybody but themselves. And so,
Cliff, wait.
Okay, go ahead.
If we can roll the time machine back to like yesterday, this is about the time that somebody very loudly said with a New York accent, what the number 1 point was. Okay. But Ed was on number 2. Okay. And Ed talked about the importance of getting cash up front. And then number 1 was failing to comply with local licensing laws can put you in jail. And
in Florida,
and other.
Well, Pete sent that email about the guy that got arrested.
Yeah. But there is one thing I want to clarify. You said on a point with Ed about price. What Ed said about the price was this. He said he's always advocated, and he has for years, you should give a lump sum price to the estimate. It's the strongest contract that you can have, even if the number's high, live with it. But he said, but a lot of contractors can't do that, have an inability when you're standing 2 o'clock in the morning knee deep. He said the second best thing is to have your time and material stuff in there, in the estimate, and that they've agreed to that and you're clearing it. But then what he said was, at that point, once that first couple days, when you get ready to put it back together, you need to have a firm estimate for that. I agree with that. I think that gives a little bit of it, sometimes they just can't, but at least you've qualified what, how you're gonna charge. And actually, the fellow that, before it was first onsite, it was Rollins, and their attorney at one of our shows essentially said that's what they did. They put that in the contract for the mitigation part. And then when you move into the part where you actually are going to do the, then you can give a firm estimate. But on a lot of these big losses, it's just difficult and you can establish it. So I thought that was good information. If the industry moves towards that, that's a good best practice. John, you got anything else on Ed or anything?
No.
All right. At this point, Joe, I want Ashley Easterby. I want you in that seat. Ken Larson, I want you in that seat. Go. No, not you.
All right.
You guys stay there. Oh, into ecstasy. Go.
Well done, gentlemen.
All right. So I want Ashley to kind of weigh in on, as an audience. You know, Ashley was a guy behind the scenes that helped with all kinds of stuff. Him and John were the volunteers that worked with Ricky Sims and helped with the setup, the breakdown for all the events all week. Would acknowledge them. They were at the registration table, just made everything flow. Those summer camp guys know when I brought into the office to meet Ricky Sims, I said, "You remember Ashley?" You know what she said, Andy? She goes, "Oh yeah, he's the beer guy at summer camp." And so I wanted to weigh in on that, and then we're gonna move to the Rain Man. Our friend Ken Larson, you know, he attends everything, comes to everything, you know, has a unique way of looking at it, and then we'll kind of let you weigh in on your thoughts on everything from both the symposium, the workshop, whatever. So you're on, Ash, go.
I need your autograph.
To start with, I thought that Ricky and Rick and the organisers, Pete, and the guys behind the scenes did a really good job on managing the event and getting it ready to go. I thought Ricky did a great job with the stuff they're doing. I thought the events were really good in that they gave a cross-section of the industry. The pioneer discussion with the pioneers, stuff old guys know, was excellent to get these guys together talking with, you know, 40 and 50 years experience in the industry. Andy, great job with what you did putting it all together. I thought Pete, the day yesterday was excellent too, for the more focus probably on the restorers. And I thought that was good. It was excellent feedback, excellent speakers, and it was a fun time. The dinners every night, I'm still getting over them. That was superb. I thought the whole event was fantastic. Thank you.
Ken.
I really enjoyed this event, and I was thinking while I was in attendance how our industry has no formal education for those who wish to be an indoor environmental professional. And I thought that, and I hope that Pete doesn't, you know, hate me for this characterization, but I think this event accommodates the indoor environmental professional, or those who are seeking to develop their skills as an IEP. We know that the standards speak about the IEP quite extensively, but nobody knows how to get that skill set. So I think at this event, you're surrounded by others who have that similar focus. And so the networking conversations become particularly interesting because our conversations center around those kinds of challenges and how we can help the contractor or the insurer or the policyholder resolve some of these IAQ issues. The other thing that I thought, and I really like the way this whole radio interview started by talking about these OGs, these gurus that have somewhat retired in the industry. And as I was sitting there in the audience, I mean, I'm 61 years old now, so I'm coming up on my retirement years. And I was looking at them and reflecting on their disposition and their experiences. And now, you know, they're somewhat retired or semi-retired, and they're reflecting back on their career. And what I particularly enjoyed was, I don't know about everybody else, but I mean, I had good times and I had some really rough times in my career. Some really poor, you know, I was struggling for cash and, you know, difficulties and whatever. And so did they. And yet here they are at the end of their career, and they're reflecting back and they're going like, yeah, it was an adventure and it was worth it. And I thought that I was encouraged by that. I didn't feel as if I was the only one that has gone through that experience. So I kind of like that. And I think that's pretty much all that I wanted to say here. I intend on being at next year's event. Where's it going to be, Pete?
Well, it's going to be in the Fort Lauderdale area, and it will be hopefully the last week of January. We haven't set the exact time. We might go back to Deerfield because that's been good, but that hasn't been decided. But it'll be in Fort Lauderdale, and we have to check and make sure that we don't conflict with those other events. So if we had to move it to February, but it's always going to be, it'll be between the championship games and the Super Bowl. We don't want to conflict the Super Bowl. So we know we have a 2-week span for that. We only done one. So anyway, it's going to be within there. We're going to send out a blast to the winter break database next week, just saying, hey, stay tuned, keep it on your calendar, more to come. I got to meet with Brittany and Ron, I got to talk with them about it, and we got to work the details out. Ken, I want to comment on something that you said. You had told me that you always enjoyed the early summer camp because the crowd was smaller, and in the recent years, the crowd's so doggone big, it's hard to really have time to do that. The one thing that I liked about this, with both the building science and Andy's event, and even the setup of the room, Cliff, I specifically was very conscious about setting that room up to have that kind of feel in the interaction. So I sincerely, I appreciate you mentioning that. Didn't know what that, but that was something. But so Ken, this reminds me is that this event and even the winter break is more like that. You have this 150, 200 crowd. It's large enough to be significant, but it's small enough that you still can have the interaction with the networking and even the dialogue and the interaction in the sessions. It gives you the opportunity to do that. The other thing that's important to say on this, Joe, is this is the first time, and Mr. Intentional there and the Restorer, we took a risk to offer this program in the combined combination of live and Zoom, which I guess is maybe the new model in the post-pandemic world. And we, outside of a few little technical clicks early, I think the day went really smooth. Apparently somebody really screwed up and gave out the private number for the internet. And at some point everybody was on. We had to tell them to log off because it froze the damn screen and the two attorneys were talking. So I don't know that guy, but hey, we ought to slap him. Now, but here's what the highlight at the end with Crosa. Patty Harmon from Claims Magazine, which is also PC 360, she's the editor-in-chief. She followed the entire event. They were a supporter. She took notes, copious notes. She followed everything. And then she asked in the log for some information, and she got feedback. And basically, I suspect that she's trying to help to educate the insurance industry, to build bridges with our industry. And she got some good feedback she took. In the very end, she kind of came on the Zoom, said hello to us. I thought that was nice. And I really appreciate Patty basically taking the time to do that. And with that, before we close out, Joe, we got Charlie Cassani in here, who's he's one of the old guys too, knows stuff. And he was retired, and then some young man pulled him out, and then he's back in there. And then we got another young stud here who's some new guy who reminds me of me 40 years ago. And let them kind of just maybe say a couple words, and then we'll just move to you. And I think the show's over. So Charlie, why don't you walk over there and just stand there so they can hear you. Now, okay, you stay seated. Just walk over there, just as long as they can hear you by the. So weigh in with a couple of comments, Charlie.
The most important thing to me was that, Peter, you encouraged me to come down here. And I had mixed emotions about it because I'm not sure how much building science relates to the things that we normally do. Boy, was I wrong. And the HVAC information that we received was top notch. I found out that Neil, one of the founding fathers, graduated from Cal State Sacramento a year before I did. Okay.
That's a coincidence.
Yeah, it was. Any rate, no, I thought the whole thing was excellent. And the day we spent together yesterday, dynamite, absolute dynamite.
Thanks, Charlie. All right, come on, get up there, Mr.
Charlie.
John March. What are we calling him? He's
Contractor John.
Contractor John, baby. Come on,
CJ.
get over there. Make sure you talk into that
CJ.
speaker thing there. Well, it don't matter. Say anything. Say what's saying. You've been talking and chatting with me for 4 days. Now I give you the microphone, and he's like tongue-tied.
Publicly speaking.
Just what you think of the whole thing? Why'd you come, man? What are you gonna do?
I came here to expand my bandwidth of knowledge, learn more stuff about what we do behind the scenes in building science, aside from roofing or building things. It's nice to know how they all work together instead of one specific component. We touched on that at dinner last night on a different component about the policyholder, the homeowner versus the property.
Yeah.
It's great to just be around people that care about the project or the property. Commercial building, roofing, solar, all kinds of different credentials or alphabets behind my name. So just want to help out any way I can and bring some more knowledge to this.
Where are you from, John?
I'm from Hollywood, Florida, but I live in Ocala, Florida now.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Hey, Joe, I got a question for you. Did anyone get the trivia question?
Yes,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Mr. Lapotere was the first in with that correct answer.
Okay. All right.
Well,
if I got it right. You were looking for the zeroth law, correct?
Correct. I was looking for the zeroth law,
You got it, buddy.
John LaPatere graciously allowed Pete to boss him around as he handed the mic around to the various people in our workshop.
Yeah.
So thank you, John.
John was great with the Donahue mic, and it worked out great. That whole thing went really pretty good. Just so you know, yeah, he said, my pleasure. Joe, so one of the things that Cliff and John, we talked yesterday, me and Jon Isaacson, we're going to do the blog as a joint blog between the Z-Man and the Intentional Restorer. And so I think it'll be important that we broaden the review since we're making comments a lot of people. We're going to talk about the logistics, but it might be a good thing to get it kind of vetted outside of that so that we get the comments right. But anyway, we try to get it all done and get it in time. I'll help facilitate the review. I mean, these guys will write the blog, and I think before you include anyone, guys, if you give it to me, let me then, I want to vet it because, you know, I think that's a good thing to do since we kind of threw a lot around. At least give Andy the
No
chance.
guarantees.
Yeah, no guarantees. You see, we get that nutcracker, and let's get that thing up there. You know, it's part of the roundup, and maybe you can put the icon in there. Anyway, I personally want to thank everybody for all the support behind the scenes. This is a team effort, let me tell you. Without all the moving parts, we could never deliver an event like this. And it is stressful, waiting for the registrations to come in. Are you going to lose money? Can you pay the bills? Because this is not a profit center by any means. This is a labor of love. And anyway, sometimes you just got to go like that. And you got to just have, well, I can't believe I'm going to say, you got to have faith.
You got to have faith.
We do. He's
yeah, exactly. So with that, Joe, on behalf of everyone involved in Winter Break Week, which is an event with components, I thank you. I thank IAQ Radio for putting up with me. Thank you, Joe.
Oh, we love you, Pete. Thanks so much. This is Radio Joe saying thanks to this week's guests, the Z-Man and Jon Isaacson, the Intentional Restorer in the DYOJO podcast. Check him out sometime. Also want to thank Andy Oss for joining us. Of course, we also had here, we got Ken Larson, Ashley Easterby, Charlie Cassini. Thank you all for joining us. I also want to make sure.
Contractor John.
Contractor John. Thank you, Contractor John. And the Nutcracker himself, Pete Consigli. But hey, please come back and join us next Friday at noon. Next week, by the way, we've got another restoration show. We've got Scott Walden of VetCorps, an interesting group there. We're looking forward to talking to him next Friday on the next episode of IAQ Radio Plus.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Reel saying thanks for listening.